Good Saturday morning. This is Michael Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates. I want to run you through what we're looking at as far as severe potential for this afternoon. I started a video earlier and had an allergy attack, so I had to start over. So if I sound a little nasally, that's why. So let's take a look at what we're expecting for this afternoon and evening. So the Storm Prediction Center continues to have the vast majority of Indiana in a marginal risk for severe today. I do think the slight risk that's down here barely touching southwestern Indiana could probably be extended up to maybe Bloomington, Vincennes area, but that's neither here nor there because the storms don't really care about lines on the map. The main thing is just that we do have a severe risk for today as we look at the tornado risk. They do have us in a 2 to 4% probability for tornadoes within any given 25-mile point. So there is a small risk for tornadoes. They likely would not be strong ones or long lived ones, but it doesn't take long for even a weak tornado to do damage. So, again, if I need to go live this evening, I will. But then the other risk to this is going to be the damaging winds. Again, I think they've got us in a 5 to 14% risk for damaging winds. I think that may actually be a little bit higher as well. But again, the main thing is not the probability percentages, but just know that it is possible. And I'll show you satellite here in a minute and what gives me a little bit of pause or a little more concern about severe today. So here's a look at the visible satellite, and we can see the main low pressure is actually kind of still back out to our southwest, and well to our southwest. You can see a boundary that's draped up across the region that this low pressure is going to travel, and you can see our cold front back in here, the main cold front really beginning to push in as well. So the reason that I'm a little more concerned about severe today is that it's not nearly as cloudy as it looked like it would be. We've got a lot of clear sky, just some scattered cloudiness out ahead. And you can even kind of see here some of the cloud tops out in Illinois beginning to get pretty white this early in the morning. There have already been severe storms out in Missouri, down in Oklahoma. So even in the morning, this is producing. So as we get into the afternoon, if we maintain this sunshine into about the 2 to 3 p.m. time frame, then to me that increases our risk for severe and for tornadoes, especially if isolated cells develop ahead of the main line. But we'll watch that because and we'll go to the HRRR model here in a second, and I'll show you what I'm kind of talking about. But we're just going to need to watch how much sunshine we get. If we get it, again, to last till 2 or 3 p.m., that does increase the instability. So we're taking a look at the high resolution rapid refresh model, or the HRRR model. And again, I don't ever go by these models verbatim. It's just provides a good visualization of what we can be looking at. It's doing a so-so job. There's actually some activity in northwestern Indiana and out in Illinois that it actually isn't picking up on. In fact, let's go look at that. So here's what we've got going on out there. So you can see this activity is advancing to the east pretty well. There's already been some lightning out in here, so nothing severe in Illinois yet, but it is building up some dynamics even in the morning. So I just want to show you this to show you that the HRRR isn't exactly picking up on all of the activity, but it still develops really good coverage, and I think it's the closest of the ones I've seen. So we advance on in. Here's about 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. The thing I want you to look at here is, see how these cells, there's a cell here, one here, one here, one here, one here. If we get that kind of if we get that kind of activity where these cells develop and they're separated from each other, that's where you're going to get a decent opportunity for some tornadic activity. And the other place you sometimes look is right back here in this crook where they changed the winds changed direction, right at the nose of the jet. Yeah, and we'll watch that back in there sometimes for some spin to develop. And it does have some heavier cells back in here. So to me, if there's going to be tornadoes for Madison County, the prime time is going to be somewhere between 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. Beyond that, it's probably mostly damaging wind threats. So as we advance on through, there's 8 p.m., 9, 10, 11. It shows a little bit of a break in there. Then as we get to just after midnight, this is 1 a.m. Thing now the wind is beginning to shift as this first part of this line, the frontal line, begins to come through. Tomorrow's high of, I don't know, somewhere around 63, 64 degrees is going to happen just after midnight tonight, probably between midnight and 1 a.m. And then the temperature is going to fall. So the majority of tomorrow is going to be in the 50s, and we'll kind of be slowly dropping through the 50s, maybe even reaching the 40s by early evening. And so that's tomorrow's going to be a lot cooler day than what the forecasts make it look like, because the temperatures will be falling. So as this comes through, then we'll just continue to see activity into the overnight hours. I'm going to switch. This is the most recent HRRR model. Let me go back to the 12Z just so we can get through tomorrow. All right, so we're picking up about the same time, about 4 o'clock in the morning, and you see there's still activity coming through. Maybe even a little bit. We might hear some rumbles in the morning around 6 a.m. And the temperature will begin to fall a lot quicker once this area gets past us and the winds really shift out of the northwest. Then temperatures will fall even faster, but this activity then will move through. Now, I will say that this model keeps the precipitation in the area. This is 3 p.m., 5 p.m., and it finally gets it out of here by about 7 or 8. I think that's too slow based on the way the pace of things right now. But I do think that by precipitation is probably going to last on and off until maybe maybe late afternoon tomorrow. But it's going to be pretty wet. Once it starts raining this evening, we're going to pick up a decent amount of rain the way things look. Here's a projected total rainfall, and it's got Madison County somewhere in the 1.5 to maybe up to 3 inches. So that's getting up to 3 inches. You're going to have to get under a particular cell, but still think widespread. We're going to see a 1/2 inch to 1.5, probably really 1 to 2 inches being realistic. It's pretty widespread, but know that some areas could pick up considerably more if we get under a particular cell. So as we get into the overnight hours behind this, and the other thing we're going to be watching for is more sustained gusty winds. As we're getting into the mornings, we can be seeing some gusts, 35 miles per hour, pretty frequently, maybe even higher, up to 40, 45, maybe even some 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts. And so tomorrow, the middle of the night through tomorrow afternoon looks pretty windy. So if you got anything that's at risk, not only do we have to watch for severe gusts with any particular severe thunderstorms this afternoon and evening, but then in the overnight and through tomorrow, we're going to be looking at pretty gusty winds. You can see these gusts in the 30 to 40 mile per hour range, lasting most of the day tomorrow. So that's another thing that we need to keep an eye on and be aware of. Last thing I want to look at is going down the road. This is not to draw your attention to specific temperatures, but basically to the pattern. Here we are today, probably pushing around 80 degrees. You see the temperatures fall off to where we could be maybe only reach the lower 50s on Wednesday. We're going to have 3 mornings at least with lows in the 30s where frost could be a risk because the winds tend to be lighter in the mornings. Cloud cover could be the thing. If we get a little bit of cloud cover in those mornings, that can help prohibit frost. But just be aware again, if you still have any delicate plants out, that the middle of the week it's going to be a frost risk. Then we'll rebound some. if we're going to get in the 70s again, it's probably going to be here in the October 26th to 28th time frame. And this is the GEFS model, so it's very smoothed out. And I'll show you the GFS here in a minute, even though I don't really like showing anything this far out. But I just wanted you to see the overall pattern. But you can see there's another front then going around Halloween and into November. The GEFS wants to bring us back closer to 60 in early November. I'm not sure that's going to happen. So let's take a look at the GFS because I think it shows the Halloween front better. And here it is. And you can see kind of the same kind of thing. We're hanging, we dip into the 50s a couple times. I think this is maybe a little too warm right here in the Tuesday through Thursday time frame. But look here, as we get to Halloween, it's got us pushing close to 70, and then a strong front comes through. And this day, probably the first, the temperatures might even be falling, but you can see it's got a high of 52 on November 1st and 40 on November 2nd. Now, don't take those numbers as gospel. The thing I wanted you to see is just the sharp front that is likely to arrive with this storm system. It's still, a week and a half out. So the timing of it could change. It could come just after Halloween. It could come just before Halloween. But we've had a pretty good run of stormy Halloweens going here the last few years. I think last year was pretty decent, but it's looking like the Halloween time frame is going to be pretty stormy again. And this may be a real punch to the fall type air, and might be about the end of 70 degrees, right before Halloween. So I just wanted you to see that pattern that's coming out ahead. There's some data that goes along with this. It's actually shown maybe some snow flurries, occurring, maybe some lake effect type snow occurring behind this front. That's too far out to know that for sure. But just know that the really warm days like we've been seeing probably done. The latest we've ever seen 80 degrees is November 10th. So that's here in Anderson. I think it's actually earlier in Indianapolis. You'd think that'd be the other way around. At any rate, you can never totally rule out another shot into the mid and upper 70s, but it really doesn't look like that's going to happen. So enjoy today as much as you can. Be aware, severe is very possible this afternoon and evening. I will go live if I need to go live. In the meantime, this is Michael Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates. Stay weather aware, and we'll update if needed.